and welcome to the Rioho Wellness Podcast. This is Margit Jepperson and I am here with Andrei Gospodarczyk, the founder of Rioho. The vision behind Rioho Wellness is to create a tipping point in wellness worldwide, and this podcast will contribute towards that. In each episode, we explore different health issues that present as case studies in Andrei's practice. They range from everyday common health problems through to extremely serious health issues and illnesses. We explore body parts and how they respond to nutrition and environment, and we work on inspiring people to change their life for good through an everyday wellness focus. Rioho is a wellness modality that is unique because it focuses on healing and wellness through basic food and exercises that maneuver the body back to a state of balanced health. People literally jump out of their skin with energy and vitality when they follow Rioho. And it's an incredible turnaround for many who have had low energy for years through to people who have had complex health issues that don't seem to budge. The podcast is an interview format and ranges from 20 to 60 minutes. And if you'd like more of an introduction on Andrei, please see the 3-minute introduction in the first podcast on the homepage. And at the end, I'll be here to give you a little bit more information. So without further ado, let's get into this episode. Weight loss is a very big issue, and what we want to talk about in this podcast is not only the obesity epidemic, because we know that that's a very, very serious problem worldwide. We also want to talk about people who are just overweight. We're going to talk about a whole wide range of things. So firstly, can I ask you, what, in your opinion, is the difference between being overweight and being obese? And the reason that I'm touching on that is because some people who are obese and are in quite a bit of trouble medically and physically think that they're just a little bit overweight. So I want you to clarify and make some distinctions about that overweight versus obese concept.
My idea of the line between being overweight and being declared obese is different to the way Western medical modern science, they have a BMI index or body mass index. They're looking at ratio of fat to height, and it's a little bit different for us. I mean, that's hard to measure on yourself, and I like to give our lives ownership. In other words, I want everyone to know what they need to do, what their situation is. My simple idea is that if your body skeleton is starting to distort, meaning that if your weight is starting to affect your posture, then you're losing your basic hormonal alignment and you're running into stress. As soon as your spine is compromised, your structural integrity is being compromised. Now, you might not have the fat body ratio situation happening. In fact, you might be under it, but for me, you might be obese. It's very simple. If your thighs are rubbing, you'll have to stand awkwardly, sit awkwardly, breathe awkwardly. You're going to be creating stress for your body. If you walk and your thighs are rubbing, unwell to the point of considering serious changes of lifestyle. It's not just a cosmetic thing anymore, and it's not just a minor health issue anymore, because it's starting to affect your structural integrity. You're starting to put strain on the placement of your organs. Your body is starting to be pushed in a way where it's straining your neck, your lower back, your knees, your ankles. It's a fascinating thing that happens for us as human beings. We can be really overweight. I've met a lot of people like this and treated them, and they don't see themselves as overweight. There's something that tends to be turned off. Now, we have a natural tendency to get overweight if we're eating certain kinds of foods, which we will explore in a moment. And there's been a lot of research done on this. It's very exciting because there's so much money being put into this problem, because now, recently, the statistics are showing that obesity is a bigger problem than starvation, which is quite astonishing. So that's our definition. If your thighs are rubbing, you're running into problems and you're having to compromise your stance. In other words, your feet are turning outwards, your weight is resting onto the back of your heels, you can't bring your big toes to bear in your stance, your center of gravity is being thrown off, therefore you're going to get tension in the neck. Unfortunately, then your thyroid shuts down a little bit. We have that as a natural reaction. That's why it's so easy to develop these problems, because one of our natural reactions to stress is to shut the thyroid down, and your body metabolism slows as a normal defense mechanism for allowing you to run from danger. Your adrenals go up, cortisol goes up, and you can then put all of your blood into your back, into the sympathetic nervous system. Your energy lifts in particular parts of your body. Your breath goes up into your chest, and it allows you to run away from danger or be on high alert. That, unfortunately, is the opposite to having a healthy digestive system. And we have that as a normal recourse to danger. One of the big problems we have in modern life is that a lot of things are very stressy. Unhappy home life, very difficult work situations where everyone is pushing themselves too hard. Lifestyles are tenuous. Up until very recently, people would only have one job in their lives. And in the most unusual situations, they might move to another business, but doing the same profession. Most people would find that an unusual statement. But if you're over 60, you know what I'm talking about. So people were allowed to make mistakes in their jobs, and your peers, your co-workers, your friends, your family would call you a silly Billy, a dumb bum, and show you the right way to do things. Now, of course, you get fired. Everything's very tenuous and very stressful. Your neck tight, your back tight, sympathetic nervous system on high alert does not allow you to metabolize food well. If you're not digesting properly, you're going to run into all sorts of problems, and a cycle begins. There's lots of things to talk about with weight loss and obesity, and one of them is understanding that we have a natural predisposition to putting on weight also, but only with certain foods. A lot of research has been done where we know now that we have a capacity to overeat fat. Your brain allows you to overeat fat. You're also allowed to overeat fructose or fruit. There's a primal hunter-gatherer mechanism in us that allows us to eat to the point of almost pain in your stomach, and you can eat even more after a little breather. We just don't know as a hunter-gatherer when we're going to get our next big kill or our next large crop of fruit-bearing trees or plants. Put simplistically, primitive lifestyles based on hunter-gathering allows us to carry a lot of food with us. We evolved past that a long, long time ago, guys, and we carry our food around in bags and boxes or leave them in jars at home. And the huge development for the nervous system and the complexity of the digestive system came about for human beings when they started using fire and salt, of course. Then you don't have to carry your food around with you on your belly and in your back like a bear. We have that capacity, and it's okay to do, especially if you live in very, very cold climate and you're living a primitive lifestyle. But city living, complex brain, complex digestive system is designed to not carry your food around. So grains, beans, vegetables, in other words, foods that can be stored, allowed us to develop extremely complex digestive systems and therefore very developed nervous systems also. Knowing this is a very simple shift then from eating lots of meat and fruit, and usually obesity is associated with animal products, as fruit and fructose puts fat on the internal organs, white sugar puts fat on the outside of the body, but real obesity comes from savory foods. You can have a combination of these things, of course. Nothing's black and white. General ideas, though. Very easy to fix these things up. No one wants to be that physically uncomfortable. Simple solutions, of course, are eating foods that are designed for city living. If you're eating hunter-gatherer foods, if you're eating a lot of animal products, if you're eating a lot of fruit and nuts, the stimulation these foods create makes you very uncomfortable with being in one place and living a calm, steady lifestyle. Foods that are storable release energy slowly. Foods that are storable requires human intervention. Foods that are storable allows us to build cities, develop language, and different people, different talents become useful. In other words, diversity and a lot of what nature intends from us, which is to grow, evolve, expand as a species and appreciate differences and become more complex and cooperate. All of this becomes easier. In other words, people who build walls, people who do paintings, people who make pots, people who can predict the weather are just as valuable as the person who, in the hunter-gatherer situation, is the strongest, biggest person. Now, eating a lot of meat and fruit, living in the city, it makes you very uncomfortable. There's a lot of pecking orders have developed rather than cooperative minds. And so we're getting weight epidemics happening where you're eating hunter-gatherer foods in a warm climate that requires living more in one place than traveling all the time and being on the move all the time. And so these very rich foods are causing lots of problems for us. Hopefully that's a clear answer about obesity and how the body puts on a lot of weight, because it is a natural tendency. We do that as a primitive tendency, the same way that stress is a normal part of life, but it's not supposed to be maintained for hours on end or days on end, or God forbid, like most of us, carrying horrendous stress problems from even childhood and before 5 years old, creating all sorts of mental disorders now. I hope that's clear, simple explanation of obesity and weight loss there.
Yeah, that's a great introduction. And there's a lot of questions that come from that. And I'd like to spend some time unpacking it and going through some of the specific points that you've raised. But before we get into it, I also just wanted to ask you, what about bloatedness versus fat in the body? So some people seem to be quite bloated, and if they stop eating the foods that are making them bloated, they tend to lose that bloatedness quite quickly. Can you talk about bloatedness versus fat in the body?
Okay, so bloating isn't fat. It just pops out. There's two kinds. There's the one associated with just between the navel and the pubic bone, and it just pops out there and becomes unsightly, uncomfortable, and embarrassing, and in some cases painful. Then there's the other one that's centered around the navel and the whole belly bloats out. Now, some people say that they're bloated and we go, oh, you poor darling. But actually, it's really, really uncomfortable for them. The pressure is very, very bad. Now, this happens for two reasons. As a general rule, it's a lack of core and, of course, inappropriate eating. There's lots of people who have it for different reasons. The one around the navel, inappropriate eating and a lack of core, is the generalization, but the one around the navel is digestive. It's going to happen to people who are intolerant to certain foods like gluten, white flour, yeast, beans, maybe certain animal products, dairy products, preservatives. These are all foods that one should maybe not have as part of their diet anyway, even though for most people, hearing me say that, it's ridiculous. They say, oh, gee, what else can I eat? But in fact, those strong foods are a main part of our society's nutritional support. There's no need for you to have those foods in your diet at all. You can enjoy them occasionally, but you don't have to have them as a source of nutrition. You don't need to have white flour. You don't need to have yeast. You don't need to have lots of fruit. You don't need to have animal products, dairy products, and especially if they're making you bloat. We can eat everything. Human beings can even handle refined foods to a certain extent. We're very adaptable. But it doesn't mean you have to live on these things. And if they're causing you a problem, it's best to go back to the basics and eat what human beings really are designed for, which is foods that break down slowly in the body, not quick combustible foods like fruit and white flour and blood, dairy products. So the bloating in the belly from the navel and your whole belly bloats up and swells. It's not really fluid. It's not really fat. It's based on the guts losing their core and some swelling. It's like the lymphs and the belly area lose their tone and it over-relaxes because your body has become unbalanced. It's a matter of holding yourself together. You could see it as liquid, you could see it as gas, but it's more common in our way of thinking to call it dampness. It's just you've lost your tone there. It's not working well. The fire has gone out in your intestines, and we need that fire in there, that digestive fire. We need that heat. We need that pressure to metabolize. Right, so that's the belly bloating one, the one around the navel. Then there's the lower body between the pubic bone and the navel. It's a very different kind of bloating, and that's usually associated with weakness in the lower back. It relates a lot to the adrenals. It can relate a lot to bone, spine, and nervous system disorders. You might say, I don't have those, but maybe you could ask your friends and they might give you a different perspective on that. If you're a little bit nervous and you're living a lifestyle based on having small amounts or large amounts of alcohol or sugar, which is the same thing, then you're going to run into, generally speaking, this lower belly bloating. It can happen as a hormonal reaction, or it can just pop up any time when, again, you've lost your tone in that part of the body. It relates to another set of core pressures. There's one core pressure around the navel. There's another core pressure just at the pelvic floor. This one relates to the pelvic floor. It's an indication that your muscles in the pelvic floor, which front, back, left and right unbalanced now, that your spine is tipping forward or back, left or right. Things are unstable there. You've lost your core pressure. And again, dampness ensues. You're feeling unstable. So they're the two types of bloating that we generally know about. I'm sure a lot of people relate to them. They've had it at some time in the other, that it happens, it goes away, it comes back. And for a lot of people, it's just there all the time. At least you know what's causing it now.
Yeah, that's great. I think that will shed a lot of light for a lot of people on that bloatedness issue. Now moving on to the epidemic of being overweight. And I want to ask you, what do you think is behind that epidemic? Now, obviously, the top line answer is people are eating the wrong foods and too much of it. But why do you think the world is in a grip of being overweight? Because the dichotomy is that there are so many health and wellness programs available online and offline now. So the wellness industry is growing and growing and growing, also in epidemic proportions, one might say. And yet obesity is on the other side of the scale and growing and almost out of control and putting enormous pressure on our health systems and the wellness of a nation, really. So what do you think is the deep reason behind the epidemic of being overweight and obese?
My general theory I've already presented, but there's two aspects that I'd like to elaborate on, which is really interesting. I mean, if we could fix up some of these issues for, say, Australia or America and just have some little common sense in this process, then the extra money the country would have, it'd solve so many problems. It'd be fantastic, and it's so simple to do. One of the things we need to look at is how we're all living on condiments. Now, food's very exciting. It's a great thing. It's a wonderful thing. It's intake. It's support. It's wonderful. But if your body nutritionally is unstable, we're constantly concerned about our intake. So, simple idea. If we're going to eat something like white flour or skim milk or sugar cane juice, which is, of course, white sugar, brown sugar, any kind of refined sugary product, whether it's honey, maple syrup. The body's natural reaction to that is to crave the other components. The very simple idea here is that your body, as part of the natural process over millions of years of evolution, can relate to an orange. It is not designed, it can't deal with vitamin C as a pill. You do not know how many vitamin C capsules to have. You cannot tell one day to the other. You might go on averages, something that's worked out in Germany for the average population, or in America for the average population, or in Tasmania for the average population, but maybe not in Sydney for your age group and your lifestyle. And even then it would still be average, not how much you need on that day. But eating an orange, you know. If you're paying a little bit of attention, you know whether you should even have an orange or not. Or maybe you need the opposite to vitamin C. Maybe you need a high mineral dose based on what you were doing yesterday. If you're eating refined foods, if you're eating partial foods, not whole foods, your body is going to be craving the other component. Now, if you've eaten a lot of white sugar, you're going to be very, very, very interested in a whole lot of fiber. Since the 60s, people have been interested in a whole lot of fiber. There's fiber capsules, there's added fiber to bread, there's added fiber to cereals, there's added fiber to fiber. It's not going to be the right balance, and that's going to create cravings for something else. As soon as you start eating condiment-based foods, as soon as you start eating refined foods as your main part of your diet, you're going to not be able to stop eating. And over the just one short lifespan, half a lifespan, 50 years, 60 years, we've created a massive epidemic that's threatening the sanity of the planet seriously. You might, as a listening audience, think that's a bold statement, but my understanding is very, very simple. If you're healthy, well and stable, you feel calm, you're generous, you have extra energy, you're not self-centered, and you're cooperative. Now, that's one broad perspective on why we've got an epidemic happening that is threatening children and making people very uncomfortable. Maybe we're living longer, but people are more miserable than ever in terms of their health. You don't have to be uncomfortable. You don't have to be unhealthy. You don't have to have lots of niggling health problems when you're 60, 70, 80. You do not. And you're not giving up anything in making yourself well. You're only losing problems. Eating good food is so wonderful. In fact, once your body starts to be able to digest well, things are not a situation of I'm craving all the time. Lovely Lisa used to have a saying, which was, if a croissant or a muffin is the highlight of your day, then you're in big trouble. But I also know that a lot of people are living that way now, and intake is their predominant thinking. What can they get out of this situation rather than what can they do? As you get healthy, that mind of what can I do outside becomes much more interesting. But you can't do that. It's not possible until you start to have a sensible, healthy, normal, supportive diet of human beings. And it's so simple, so easy, and very, very cheap. And like you pointed out, Margate, the biggest interest now for everyone is these health fads and books on health and nutrition, documentaries, and fascination with all of this stuff because it's a very big problem. I wish it was working, but it's not. The answers do not lie in what you can buy. It's a matter of changing lifestyle. It's not adding more kale. It's not adding different kinds of amazing superfoods into your diet. No. It's not going to solve anything. I wish it did. I wish coconut oil was the answer. I wish that some rotten drink was the answer. Some fermented drink was the solution to our problems. And I'm sure it's helped some people enormously with specific problems, but it's only going to create more problems later on. You haven't dealt with the real issue if we need something desperately to make us feel better. The other problem that we have is not understanding balance. There's two parts of a human being, the sympathetic and the parasympathetic. The sympathetic part of us is our primal, basic, structural integrity. It's part of our evolutionary process. It relates to the sympathetic nervous system. The other part of us is the bit that evolved after our amphibious stage of development, and it relates to our ability to control ourselves and regulate our more primal part. When the primal part of us is uncomfortable, it resists. Just imagine being a lizard and it's cold and you don't want to move. Now, you've been there where you're lying in your bed and it's cold and you don't want to get out of bed. That's your primal lizard nature saying, I'm cold, I don't want to get out of bed. Another situation might be where you're hungry or you're doing exercise and some little discomfort comes. That's your reptilian nature, your survival instinct, that little part of you that grips your belly, tightens you up, and gives you a little bit of stress. And we have resistance. The other part of us, the more human, evolved part of us, is supposed to control that a little bit and make balance. It's supposed to say, no. It's okay, we'll get up, put on the air conditioning, put on a jumper, light a fire, and we'll be toasty yummy. And then we won't be fired when we get to work late. There's a little bit of discomfort, but knowing that if you get up and quickly put on a jumper, that resistance, that discomfort, that pain coming from your lizard part of yourself, the primal part, the survival instinct part, that defensive part of you will pass momentarily. The same with hunger. No, we can't stop to eat. We have to keep going for a little bit. That part of you that wants to go to the toilet, but you say, no, we can't do it in the street. Let's find a toilet. There's a relationship. There's a balance. And people are not allowing themselves that relationship anymore of balance. There's reasons for all of that, and there's solutions to all of that, of course. But they're the two primary reasons that we're having very, very big problems with our basic weight and our nutritional support systems, which are collapsing on a daily basis now. So hopefully that's a good explanation.
So these two next questions are linked, and the first part of it is about long-term overweight people. So I'm talking about obese people, but also just people who are carrying maybe 5-10 kilograms more than they really ought to be in peak condition. What I'm interested to know is that on a really deep level, and I think the answer is yes, but I just want to explore it a little bit. Do people actually care if they are overweight? Because what I'm getting at here is when the student is ready, the master will appear. And that's a concept true for every single part of our lives. Yours and mine and everybody. When the student is ready, the master will appear. If people do really care that they are overweight, what pushes them to care enough to do something about it? I think you know the reason behind my question. I'm looking for the trigger here. So how can we help people say to themselves, actually, I do care? Because there's so much available, yet there's so many overweight people. So how can we help that trigger become more apparent out of their subconscious?
It's really very obvious. These people have got, let's go through a few different levels of it where we're looking at morbidly obese. Now, those people get up every single morning, Margit, every single morning trying not to eat. It's hard for them to get out of bed, get to the toilet, get to work. It's very uncomfortable for them. But then by evening time, they lose it. The people who are obese or overweight to different levels, they see it or don't see it. They feel uncomfortable. They've got sore knees. I see people who have been to the doctor and have severe knee and ankle problems because of their weight, and they're obviously overweight. The strain on their knees and ankles is immense, and yet they're told by medical health practitioners that they're predisposed to these conditions, that they have weaknesses in their knees and ankles, which is just ridiculous. It's just happening too much, this genetic excuse. It's not right. We're not genetically designed to be uncomfortable. We've all got weaknesses, we've all got strengths, but it's so easy to make balance for these things. Some of us are capable of doing accounting. Some of us love accounting. And others of us, we feel sick thinking about it. Some of us can fix things, some can't. Everyone's different. Some of us have strong legs. Some of us have strong arms. You can make balance for all these conditions and cope very easily. My tendency is to feel very uncomfortable with fruit because I grew up with a European family that obviously Northern Europe doesn't have lots of fruit. Pineapples and bananas do not grow in a country that has 50 below zero temperatures. I just can't. It's not in me. So it's fine. I don't need it. I'd rather have a life. And it's easy. It's easy. If you don't for a little while and then do, and then you feel uncomfortable, and then you don't. If you've always been hitting yourself in the head with a lump of wood and you stop one day, you realize that you don't need to anymore, but only if you stop for a little while. I know that sounds simplistic, but it's actually true. Our lives are very, very simple. People are simple.
If we take some case studies in the community and just look at their mindset around this, from older people who are overweight, and it might be bloatedness or overweightness, but they enjoy their nuts and scotch at the end of the day, or there's others that enjoy their cakes and tea through the day, and they are very overweight. You can hear them in their breathing, that their breathing is laboured, and they are often in denial, or they might say, I've lost a few kilos, and you can't actually see where they've lost those kilos at all. And looking at them, you think, well, do you actually care that you are overweight? And then we've got mums and dads where the middle-age spread has crept up, and they might have very busy lives. They might be working full-time and caring for small or teenage children, and they enjoy a drink as a contextual marker at the end of the day, or they enjoy sweet foods or chocolate or whatever their comfort is. They are overweight and they say, oh, yes, I know I'm a little bit overweight, but it's okay. It doesn't matter.
Yep, because people are saying it's okay, but it's actually not. You're uncomfortable.
Correct. So, and then we have morbidly obese people who go and sit in McDonald's and eat a lot of food that is very, very toxic to them, don't seem to care and push back if there is any comment about that. So those sorts of people, which are very commonplace in our community, on everywhere across Australia and probably the world, people in those circumstances, do they actually care if they are overweight?
Yep, they do. And they, unfortunately, though, are in a situation where they don't have any choice. Now, you're eating sugar. If you're eating white sugar, it's an addictive drug. It makes you very uncomfortable. There's a lovely documentary done on a young man, a journalist, a very brave soul, who for a month just ate McDonald's. And about 2 weeks in, approximately 2 weeks into the little experiment it's in a movie called Super Size Me. A couple of weeks in, he said, I am not happy anymore unless I'm eating McDonald's. He said, it's astonishing. I'm miserable if I am not eating McDonald's. You don't have a choice anymore. It's not a matter of feeling like you're going to choose to not eat sugar or not eat chocolate or not eat donuts, even though we know it's causing us problems. I'm not talking about your average person who's comfortable and having a treat, and it's fine. It's wonderful. We live very rich lifestyles, and that's the second part of the story where we're allowed to be very overweight or uncomfortable. We're allowed to have bad backs. We're allowed to have bloated bellies. We're allowed to have veins in our legs. We're allowed to have spines that are dysfunctional because we have palanquins. We have vehicles that drive us around. We don't have to walk. We have food delivered. As long as you have the resources, money, and we're wealthy enough to live like kings now and have what we call these royal diseases: heart disease, obesity, high blood pressure, these sorts of problems, and excess weight. Now, even the person with a little bit of weight at the top of their buttocks, the young women listening, you know what I mean, that little bit just at the top of their hip, that little fluffy bit, the bit that doesn't work with the bikini. It works with jeans, it works with a dress, it's all fine, we can get away with it, but it doesn't work with the bikini. That little bit. We don't want that either, but how do you get rid of it? You can't. It's very, very hard. The same as the obese person. It's not a matter of choosing because of the earlier dialogue about your body being able to consume certain foods, but it's not right. We're not designed for it. It's uncomfortable. And people want to change. They're trying to feel more comfortable. They don't want the little love handles. They don't want the top of their thighs to look that way. They want their arms slimmer, and they feel uncomfortable with that. And I'm not saying that you're unhealthy if you have these little bits of weight on your arms and your hips, but that's not what people want. They feel uncomfortable with that. We're not really designed to carry that around. If you look at any animal, they're not built that way to carry that extra. They're lithe, they're slim. Every muscle shows through the skin as they walk. So there's a constant desire there all the time. They're being fed the wrong information is the conclusion to all of this. They try hard. And this is the modern information coming out now, is they're feeling like failures and they struggle. They go do Pilates, they go and do the aerobics, they sign up to the gym, they go running up and down the beach, and it just causes more stress. Some of us can push on hard, do a lot of running up and down the hill and injure ourselves. Others just break because we push too hard, we do too much at the beginning, and we end up with swollen ankles, tendinitis, maybe tear hamstrings, whatever, injure our knees, get shin splints. It's very hard to make balance for the nutrition. And also you're nutritionally deficient and they're telling you to have protein drinks, which creates a whole lot of other problems. None of it really is working for us, obviously. It's working for some. Their bodies are very, very tense. I see them, I deal with them, their nerves are frayed, they're stressed. Now, where people get very excited and really commit to the changes and change their lifestyle slowly, doing the right thing and start to really take responsibility for their health by doing the simple things that we're talking about, that the whole planet is talking about now, is when they realize that the bloating in your belly, the heaviness in your thighs, the poor skin condition, the cellulite, it's not just affecting you physically, it's affecting you as a person the same way that any physical change affects you as a human being. If you're not standing up straight, you're not being your true self. You're feeling defeated. You will respond to circumstances in a stressful manner, and it's not really who you are. Unless your body's balanced and comfortable, you're going to have an uncomfortable response to difficulties. We need to train ourselves into being balanced between the upper and lower body and responding to difficulties in a happy, optimistic, grateful manner and seeing it as a natural step in our personal journey as human beings. It's a big statement, I understand that, but it's a very simple idea to understand that everything's connected. If your spine is tense from being overweight, which it will be, if your organs are compromised, you as a human being is compromised. Your heart, your liver, your spleen, your knees, your ankles, your wrists, all of you is necessary. It's just perfect. It's wonderful. Your heart makes you happy. It does. Yes, chemicals in your brain do, but the adrenals, your kidneys, your bowels, we're all realizing now, finally, Western medical science is evolving to the point where it's seeing that things are connected, that there's feelings associated with chemicals. We're not just a brain, we're also a body. That if you stand up and breathe deep, your mood changes. If you have good, strong legs and a good, strong spine, you feel safe. That things like exercise has a huge impact on your brain and on your mood. So once people realize that their weight, that their digestion, what they eat, not just affects their body shape, it also affects them as a human being. Once they make those connections, they get very, very excited because they don't see themselves as an uncomfortable person anymore. They see themselves as a person in transition. In other words, knowing that if you work on yourself as a person a little bit, try to eat a little bit better, chew your food, that you'll be able to eat less. That if you stretch your body, stand up straight, sit up straight, breathe into your tummy, learn how to do these things simply and effectively, that little feeling of relax and that little effort of putting good food in will eventually, after a few weeks, after a few months, even after a few years, will result in you being able to easily become one of those people that you meet occasionally, say, oh, I don't even like coffee. Oh, sugar. Oh, it's disgusting. It burns my mouth. Imagine that.
Yes, that's a brilliant checklist, I think, for so many people. And if anyone was going through it like I was going through it, it was almost like, yes, that was me. No, yes, yes, no, yes. It's a really good description and case study of a lot of people that I'm sure they know, if not themselves. So that was perfect.
All right, I'm very glad. We're all the same, really. You know, we're all just one person, and anyone you look at in the street or in a photo or on TV, we're just different versions of each other, and we can all relate to each other's issues. And there's great success for all of us out there in terms of our health. We just listen to the ones who've had great success. So I hope that it gives everyone some little comfort and just understand that it's really very simple and it's a lovely journey of delight, and a lot of the things that are making you very uncomfortable as a human being can just dissolve and disappear. It's not you, it's illness.
And that leads perfectly into my next question, which is, it's a little bit of an esoteric question for some people, but I think that it's very valid. Do people carry weight as a protective mechanism emotionally? And then also, what about if there is illness in the body? Does the body carry more weight physically as a protective mechanism?
Far too hard to generalize, really very difficult to generalize. You know, there's the worst situation is when you're not putting on weight. The alcoholic with the bloated belly and the very skinny legs, the drug addict with the skinny thighs, terrific look, the cocaine, the crack. These are the people that are very, very sick. There's a lot of people who can eat tons of food, eat McDonald's, eat sugar, eat all that toxic stuff that we can have occasionally maybe when we're okay, and shouldn't definitely be feeding our children, should not be feeding our children. Your children are not missing out by not eating poison, believe me. Yeah, it's a very, very simple process for all of us to be very, very well. I don't believe that people put on weight as a protective mechanism, although I've heard the dialogue, of course. People comfort eat also, and they're very, very thin. Dairy puts on weight. Dairy is a very motherly food. I don't see weight as a protective mechanism. I don't see it as a serious sign of illness. If you're putting on weight because you're eating rich foods, it's actually a good sign. At least it's just that. It's when you start losing weight and you get constipated and you have pain in your stomach and you're starting to lose weight even though you're eating. This much, much more serious. You should put on weight if you're eating rich food, if you're living on protein drinks, if you're drinking lots of smoothies, if you're having avocado and eggs every day. Of course you should put on weight. Yeah, it's normal. These are rich condiment-based foods. I don't see them as serious signs of illness. I don't see being overweight as a big problem. At least your intestines are still working. It's a wonderful thing, believe me.
Yeah, right. That's really interesting because I've always thought that for someone who's got some sort of illness or not completely well, that sometimes their body can carry weight in a particular area, almost like it's protecting that organ until that wellness issue is sorted out. So that's interesting to hear that dispelled.
Yeah, not the way I think about it.
Yeah, good. Great. So leading on from that, then do you believe the concept that a lot of work on emotional state needs to be done in order to conquer weight loss? Because a lot of these weight loss programs or initiatives in the marketplace seem to focus a lot on mindset. So do you think that there's an emotional issue in order to conquer?
I don't think emotional issues and dealing with emotional issues is going to help us with weight loss. I know that this is a popular process now. I have the same feeling about it as I do with different kinds of therapies like that. It can put a stress on top of a stress. Now, we're eating cakes or dairy products to excess. We're having big slabs of butter. We're eating ice cream at night. Our boyfriend has left us. Our girlfriend's left us. Our partner hates us, whatever, and we turn to comfort foods. We're alone. We live alone. We feel alone, and food becomes our friend and our source of stimulation. Food can create a party inside us. If you're eating ice cream, if you're having coffee, if you're eating meat regularly, if you're having these sorts of foods as a support system for your daily living, it makes the inside of your body very exciting. The food becomes exciting. Your internal organs are constantly talking then. There's a constant need for a particular kind of cappuccino, extra hot, more milk, less milk, half double strength, and certain kinds of chicken or Mars bars or cooked in a particular way or frozen. We get fussier and fussier, and the relationship with our internal organs becomes stranger, stronger, and more dependent. So it's an enormous amount of internal dialogue. The extreme is going one step further from normal healthy food, which let's call bland, to normal exciting food, which is the extremes of salt and oil, both organic, healthy, whole, cold-pressed oil and healthy, organic, whole sea salt, of course, used in the right way, in the right amounts. They're our extremes. And then going further, where you're now getting into refined products, that's going to create party inside you. Even oil and salt is going to create stimulation and excitement internally. And if you go further, we're talking about drugs. There's no difference between sugar and then the next step of things like marijuana, cocaine, coffee. They alter you. You don't need anyone then. The outside world becomes uninteresting. We can sit in the gutter, have some drugs, and have our party inside. We can sit at home, be alone, not deal with the problem of our relationships and our lives, and eat a bucket of ice cream and feel comfort and excitement and satisfaction from that. Or we can go the other way around and have bland food, have no party happening inside. Being well is the opposite of the person I just described. Being well is boring. You're calm, steady, neutral. And the outside is extremely exciting. Trees, sunshine, clouds, other people's faces. Now, maybe you're not meeting people like this that I'm describing. Maybe you're not knowing a situation in your life where you've ever been that way. But look at it this way. Think about how overexcited maybe you are inside with coffee or maybe just lots of green tea, maybe lots of avocados and quinoa and fried food and overeating, and the internal area is overexcited just on a mild level. And if you have a little bit of excitement on the outside, you feel balanced. But as soon as something's a bit quiet on the outside, you feel unbalanced. So excitement inside, excitement outside, and it's okay. But if it's quiet inside, then the outside becomes extremely interesting. And just the look in someone else's eyes is a world. Maybe you don't know these sort of people, but what I'm describing is a normal, healthy, stable adult. We see this in children, what I'm describing. We should never have lost it. I hope that's an answer, Maggie.
Yeah, good. So moving on to the impact of social media, where we see a very high prevalence of skinny, beautiful people. And it's interesting to see at the moment that there is a bit of a push to have acknowledgement that everybody's body shape is different and that's okay. And I'm curious to know what you think of the impact social media has on wellness and whether you think it's a good thing, because I think that this issue of accepting a normal body shape, we have to be very careful with it, because yes, there are all sorts of different body shapes and that's fantastic, but they have to be well body shapes. We can't start focusing on a body shape if that body shape is still overweight. And so I'm interested to know what you think the impact of social media has had, whether you think it's a negative or a positive on overweight people.
Let's look at the reality of this situation of the rebound of social media to what we had as a serious issue with these models. They were generally seriously underweight. A lot of them were unhealthy looking. Then there was a rebound. Now that rebound maybe gone a little bit too far, but that's okay. In fact, maybe not far enough, who knows, whatever. What's comfortable for you is what's important. Some of us have big hips. Some of us have thin hips. Some of us have little tiny hands. Some of us have big hands. Some of us are tall. Some of us are short. There's different preferences for body types within different cultures. What's beautiful in one culture is unattractive in another. Genetics play a lot in these situations. So as a simple answer to the question, I think that social media had a good impact, and the modeling world is starting to present more normal looking people, and it was seriously flawed, projecting that kind of image as normal and healthy. I remember being in Asia and seeing the young girls trying to run to catch the train in 6-inch heels. Very funny. Similar set of circumstances. Maybe you don't see the connection. But it's just not normal what they were trying to show as normal. And hopefully now people are seeing that there is normal. Different cultures, different body shapes, a little bit of heaviness on the hips is normal. A little bit of heaviness in the legs is normal. Depends what climate you come from, what your genetics are. But for all of us, there's a normal balance where we feel good. We feel comfortable. The body moves easily. Thighs are not rubbing. We can easily stand up straight. And excess is not really part of that. We're not designed to carry extra in a civilized society. It's not efficient. As I was saying before, if you look at any animal, it's not the way we're designed, really. So hopefully that's a clear response to that social media question.
Do you think older people should carry a little bit of extra weight to have extra buffer, or padding to sustain them through their older years?
No, I don't think there's a big difference. There's a very big change that happens in the 60s. You get a new lease on life. We've all got mothers or grandmothers that have completely changed around that time and started traveling or took up some weird hobby, moved into a tree house. We go through very big changes. It's a new third stage of our lives. It's our spiritual time where we're supposed to be very giving and generous and sweet. And look, it's okay to carry a little bit of weight, of course, when you're a child, when you're an adult. It all depends, like I was saying, depends on the climate, depends on your genetics and all the rest of it, depends on what you're comfortable with. I think being too skinny is more of a problem than carrying a little bit. But yeah, certainly do go through certain hormonal changes, but you should never put on weight around the ankles, around the calves, around the wrists. These are signs that something is going wrong. So as long as you're comfortable, you can still stand up straight. Your breath is in your lower belly and you're feeling okay. Maybe your lifestyle is a little bit softer now. Maybe you're not doing as much. But usually we cut down on our food. If you're eating well, your natural response is to eat a little bit less and maintain your body weight. But we certainly don't need a buffer, no.
And what do you think about overweight children? Should we be worried when we see chubby 5 to 6 year olds? Should we be worried when we see kids with so-called puppy fat on them? What are your thoughts around overweight children?
Let's start at the beginning concerning children and weight. It's a very touchy area. You should always consult your doctor, your obstetrician, but we have a very simple idea, which is baby in the womb should be slim and thin to be able to get out easily. Surely that makes some sense, eh? Babies are being born bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger now. It's not normal to have large, overweight, chubby, fat babies. Normal to have slim babies and to put on a lot of weight very, very quickly after the birth. That chubbiness is normal and usually remains there up until about 6 or 7, the first big shift happens then. Then you get lean and slim. That's up 5, 6, 7. It's normal to have some protective bounce. But then there's a transition. 5, 6, 7, 8. That's a big change in child mentality, perception, and metabolism. Then the next one, of course, is 13, 14, 12, 13, 14. We all know that that's another huge shift. The first one is around 5, 6, 7, and there's a growth spurt. There's a couple of them there. But the mind shifts a lot, attitude shifts a lot, outward going nature evolves, and yeah, that's even so, a little bit of softness is okay there. Again, genetics play a large role, but chubby and bouncy and fullness up until 6, 7, really not a bad thing. In fact, the other way around, a little bit uncomfortable. I'm really happy when I see children who are not a little bit full up until the age of 5, 6, 7. I like seeing it. I do. And teenagers also, I don't mind that they carry a little bit extra. In our society, there's some little problems, lack of activity. The schooling system is destroying them, of course, but that's another story.
Yes, that's another story. Good to know. And we will be doing a podcast specifically for children and childhood illnesses, and we will cover obesity in children during that time. But that's some good information there. Before we move on to a couple of mini solutions that people might like to think about as we head out of this podcast, I just wanted to ask you about lap band surgery.
It works for some, doesn't work for others. People have had the lap band surgery, I know for a fact, has had very big impacts on some of them. For others, they've just started sucking food down in through a straw and still force themselves through into overweight again. I see these solutions personally, and the whole way that Ryoho views this sort of mentality of having someone fix your problem for you as not very healthy. We're more complex than just physical bodies. We're far more complex than stitching up your stomach. By you changing your diet, by you as an individual who is having stomach problems and digestive problems and having a weight issue, even though it's life-threatening, by you not dealing with it in the right way. And I know that people have tried everything, but they haven't done the right thing. They've been, as I said earlier, Margit, they've been led up the garden path. They've been given solutions that don't work. They've been lied to, and now they feel like they are failures. And they've tried all the things that they're told to try, and they didn't work. And now they only have this situation, unfortunately, where they're told to cut their stomach up or ban their stomach, or some of it removed or some of it tightened up and made smaller. And that, of course, reduces the amount of food that you eat. And then we have weight loss. A lot of people, it just comes back on. It's not the answer to the problem. We're not just bodies. We're emotions, we're feelings, we're ideas. There's something wrong going on, and the truth has to be discovered, not just fixing the symptom. I know that the answer for some of us is to fix the symptom so that we don't die. I get that. But we can change it in other ways, the right way, by discovering on the deepest level what the real cause of these problems are, by dealing with good food, addressing our real issues as a human being, what's causing this. Maybe it's just chemicals in your body. Maybe it's your spine. Maybe it's how you view yourself. Maybe it's how you view others. Maybe there's psychological problems, but we won't find out what our real issues are without really dealing with them, and dealing with the symptoms is not the answer.
Just a little bit about this Ryoho concept of that you actually have to do the work on the inside, that you can't have someone do the work for you. A lot of sensible medical advice and a lot of sensible weight loss programs are based on the concept of reducing calories and increasing exercise. And so people will go on that sort of diet, and some of them are successful in keeping it off forever from that day forward, but others will go through that program and then only to see the weight sneak back up on them. So they are actually doing the work on the inside, but possibly they're doing the wrong type of work, because it's not just about reducing calorie intake and reducing sugar and reducing some of the other fatty foods, is it? It's about content of those calories and content of the exercises that will lead to long-term wholesale changes that stick.
Absolutely. We're very complex human beings, you know. We're evolved way beyond the physical. We separated ourselves from nature a long time ago, and we need clothing, we need shelter, we need fire, we need different foods. We need foods that are processed through our own efforts, like pickles and fermentation and making breads. We need to understand ourselves and accept ourselves and explore ourselves as far more than just the physical. So you can maybe make a little effort, like people have done, where they're doing exercise and go on a strict diet, lose their weight, and then of course it just comes back on, or they even do some damage, maybe do fruit fasts and cause problems for themselves. Maybe they've lost weight and it stays off. We're very complex. We need relationship, we need purpose, we need certain sorts of foods, we need to be grateful for everything around us, we need to hold ourselves in a particular way as human beings constantly, we need morals, we need ethics, we need nurturing, not just on the physical, but we need to read every day. We need our minds nurtured as much as our eyes need nurturing. There's many orifice that we have. It's not just the mouth. There's the nose, there's the ears, there's the eyes. All of them need nurturing, feeding. And until we step away from a very simplistic viewpoint of we're just bodies and our problems are solved genetically, until we get past that really quite silly idea, then we're going to have problems.
And that wraps it up for today. And we hope you've enjoyed this episode just as much as we've enjoyed putting it together for you. Any listeners who would like to learn more about Andre's work or Ryoho can connect and follow on Instagram and LinkedIn using the address of Ryoho Wellness. We spell Ryoho Ryoho and then add wellness on the end, obviously. Episode notes will be loaded up and available at ryohowellness.com, which is the master website. And just a few more things before you take off. Number 1, do you have a health issue or question you would like explored in one of our podcasts? Please submit it to us at the website where there is a contact page, ryohowellness.com website. Number 2, would you enjoy being notified by very short email every time we do something on Ryoho Wellness? This includes notification of our up-and-coming wellness podcasts and other things towards our tipping point. If you want to receive that, go to ryohowellness.com and drop in your email address and you'll get the very next one. And we hope you really enjoy it. Thanks everyone for listening, and thank you, Andre, for another fantastic episode. See you next time.